Today, I've got a channel content update, and then I'm going to show you some books from a series that I finally finished putting together earlier this year, and then just recently, I sat down and read the whole thing. Check it out. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the channel. My name is Chris, and this is Northgarden Comics. Today, I've got two primary things I want to accomplish with you. The first is to give you an update on some of the upcoming channel content you can expect from me. And then second, I've got a stack of books here to share with you. You heard in the intro, this is Image Comics Descender that came out from 2015 to 2018. And I finally finished putting the whole run together. And then just recently, last weekend, I sat down and read the whole thing. So I want to share the books with you and talk about the series a little bit and keep it as spoiler-free as possible for those of you who haven't read it yet. But first, before we get to that, if you like this kind of content, comic book and comic book related content, please take just a moment and hit that subscribe button. And as you watch, if you see something that you like, give it a thumbs up, and I'll say, let me know if you've got comments and thoughts on the things that we talk about. Now for the channel content update. You know, when I started this channel, I knew I wanted my content to represent who I am as a collector and as a reader of comic books. And while I've done that, honestly, so far, I haven't done it very completely. I've been pretty heavy on showing you either the new books that I bring home each month or the back issues that I get at shows, sales, conventions, and I love those things, and I will continue to bring that content to you, but that's just one aspect of how I approach this hobby, and so I thought maybe a good idea to expand my content, bring some additional things to you for your enjoyment and benefit, but then also for my own. There is a selfish component to this because I want to connect with others who share a love for this hobby and learn from you through the comments and how we connect through these videos, Instagram, things like that. So toward that end, here's three things that I'm going to be adding to the mix of the content that I bring to my channel. One is a series that I'm going to call Let's Talk Collecting. That could be a topic that I've been thinking about recently. That could be any aspect of comic collecting or reading, anything that falls under the realm of this hobby that maybe is of interest to me, and maybe I have some thoughts on it I want to share with you, but I also want to get your thoughts shared with me, because I'm not going to stand here and say that I am an expert on any of these things. I do have a perspective, and I do have some history. I've been collecting for 33 years now, but I do want to learn from you, and I'll sit and watch YouTube videos myself so that I can learn from all of you and how you approach this hobby, and maybe we can learn and share best practices with one another. A second type of content I'm going to add to the mix is what I call Short Box Showcase. Now, I have done a couple of these already, but it's been months since my last one. And essentially the idea is that I pull one of these boxes off the shelf from behind me, we open it up, and we take a look at one of the runs or the titles that's inside. I do that because even though I've been showing you back issue and new comic hauls for several months now since I've had this channel, I've been collecting for a whole lot longer than I've had a YouTube channel. And you hear me say too that these books rarely get to see the light of day after they've been read, bagged, boarded, and stored in a box. So it's nice to have an excuse to pull them back out, share those covers and that great artwork with you, and maybe you'll get inspired and find a series that you want to add to your collection. So we'll do some more short box showcases. The ones I've done so far are Transformers. That was my introduction to comic book collecting back in the 80s. And then I've shown almost an entire run of the Thundercats comics that Marvel did under the Star Comics imprint, also back in that 80s, early 90s type of an era. But we'll do more short box showcases. The third type of content I'm going to add will be more around books that I've read. You know, I love collecting comic books, but I also really love reading these stories as well. I love the art, I love the characters, I love the stories, and so when I come across a story or a series or a title or a run that I've really enjoyed, I'll come on and I'll share that with you. Maybe you've read it and then we can share our thoughts about that series together, or maybe you haven't and it gives you an idea of something additional that you'd like to go out and collect. All right, those are the updates I wanted to give you around my channel content. Let me know what you think down in the comments below. Are you new to collecting? Have you been collecting for years? Do you have a question, a comment, a topic, an aspect of this hobby that you want to explore more? Let me know. Maybe it would make a good topic for a video. Now with that, let's shift gears over to the second thing I wanted to tell you about today, and that is a series of books that I want to share with you. I just recently sat down and read the entire series of Descender, put out by Image Comics. This is a series that ran from 2015 to 2018, and I didn't start collecting it until after the whole run was done. 32 issues, like I said, ended in sometime in 2018. About 6 months after that is when I started picking up issues, and it was because somebody somewhere mentioned this was a cool series and recommended the story, and so I figured, well, what the heck, why don't I keep my eye out for the back issues? And so over the last 2 years, I've been slowly piecing together this epic story and have been able to do so for like $1 or less in most cases. I think there's only a couple examples in here of books that I spent a whopping $1.50 on. I share that because if Descender is something you'd like to check out, you can do it pretty inexpensively. And so you don't need to worry about spending a lot of dollars on any one of these issues. The one exception, and I'm just going to show it right up front, there's a little bit of a story here, is number 1. So here's issue number 1, and this is your main protagonist here, Tim 21. He's an android, and I'm sharing this one because if you see this banner here, you'll know that I did not buy a first printing of issue number 1. Now that kind of goes against what I normally do. Normally you'll hear me say in my videos, I'll be patient, I'm going to hold out, and I'm going to wait to get a first printing for $1 or $2. You know, the reality is I haven't seen one yet, not for that kind of a price. And to buy a first print of this, if you go on mycomicshop.com, I think raw copies are going in like $10 to $15 range. And I don't want to spend that kind of money on a single issue book just so I can read the story. But I really wanted to read the story. And prior to this issue, I had the entire volume and I was just waiting on number 1. And so I finally crumbled. I gave in and didn't patience lost out. I ran out of patience and I said, I'm just going to go ahead and buy this, but don't feel too bad for me because I paid a whopping 60 cents for this reprint. Would I still like to have a first print? Of course I would. And if someday I see one in a dollar bin, I'll grab it. But in the meantime, I haven't had to wait any longer. I was able to read this great story. Now let's go ahead and look at the rest of the covers from the series, and I'll tell you a little bit about the story, and I'll do my best to keep it spoiler free. So that was issue number 1. And we go going right through the whole volume with issue 2. This is a story, it's sci-fi, it's been called like a space opera. I don't know if it takes place in the future or in the past. It's not really important. It is high technology though, and kind of like Star Wars was a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away, this might as well be the same. It doesn't make any direct connection to Earth that I'm aware of, but it doesn't set the time. But you've got basically robots or machines versus organic based creatures. I don't want to say just humans because there's definitely all sorts of alien life that come up in the series, but it focuses around this little guy here, Tim 21. He's your main protagonist, and he's a companion android meant to be like a child's companion, and he's a really highly developed artificial intelligence, so he has empathy and develops not exactly feelings, but you know, he starts to gain feelings. He might as well be human. And you have a world where, you know, there are people who hate machines and there are people who get along with the machines, and yeah, there's conflict that arises. It's a really cool cast of characters. I would say it's written well in the sense that it could be adapted for a movie, maybe better for a series that could run, you know, a season or 2 just to tell this story. It's nice because it's self-contained. You don't need to know anything leading into it, which is really nice because in a lot of the mainstream comics, you feel like you need to know something of the background of the characters before you get into them, but it also ends as well. So 32 issues you can actually close off. It doesn't go on indefinitely. But I will have another comment on that, you know, before we finish here. Some of these middle issues are kind of cool too. You see with just some of these characters on here, several of the main characters get a whole issue that really tells their backstory, so it fleshes out where they're coming from, how they got to be where they are today in the story. But they all come together around this robot, Tim 21, or this android, Tim 21, And obviously some people are for him, some are against him. And yeah, I would really recommend reading the story. And again, don't spend a lot on these issues. You can also get these come in a variety of collected editions. It's probably 5 or 6 trade paperbacks that would make up these 32 issues, but they're readily available as trade paperbacks, and those would collect probably 4, 5, or 6 issues each, and they would probably be less than $10 a piece if you get them on sale. But I have also seen that you can get, there are 2 deluxe hardcover editions of Descender as well. So I think, you know, the first one does the first 17 issues, and then the second volume does the second half of the series. But I'm actually tempted to add those 2 deluxe hardcovers to my collection. I just, maybe 2 months ago, ordered my first omnibus from Marvel, and I'll show that in a separate video after I get it. But I don't have any other collected editions in hardcover format, but I will say that the appeal of those has been growing on me, and so I might go ahead and take the plunge and get Descender and make that an addition to my hardcover collection, just because it's a great self-contained story, and I would read it again at some point. Here we are, we're up to issue 26, we're almost done here, but you can see great painted covers, great interior art by Dustin Nguyen, and kind of coming to the climax of the series here. And just nice colors, nice renderings. This character, her name is Telsa. She's one of the main characters. Here, that's pretty cool looking. But yeah, if you like sci-fi, if you like man versus machine, you definitely like this. It's got all the good, hits all the good emotional notes as well. Love this cover to issue number 30. Nice. It's not even a variant. It's just a virgin cover for Descender. Really like that one. Here's 31, the penultimate issue. And then lastly, we've got issue 32, and this is where it wraps up. Now, I said before that the story, you don't need to know anything beforehand. You can just jump right in and you'll get all the backstory as you read it, but then you don't need to read anything after this because the story ends. That is true, but it also leaves itself open for more story, and I'll show you a little teaser. 6 months after Descender ended, we got Ascender, and this is currently in publication. I think Ascender's like 15 issues in at this point, and this is kind of a fast forward like 10 years after Descender, and it picks up the story. And whereas Descender was sci-fi, this is more magic and fantasy. The one thing I will say is if you plan on reading both, just be prepared. I read Ascender number 1, but it was like a year ago that I read it, so I had long forgotten the details of this story. And so coming into Descender, it was fresh, and everything was brand new for me. If you read this first and then quickly go to Descender, you just have to know that this will spoil some things that you'll encounter in Descender, because there's some carryover on characters and things like that here. This is meant to be a continuation of the story, but again, just be aware that if you start with this one, you're going to know some things going into Descender that you wouldn't get if you approach Descender as a first-time reader without anything else. All right, that's going to do it for me, and that's going to wrap up this channel update, along with sharing with you the Image Comics Descender series. Have you read it? Have you been thinking about reading it? If you've read it, let me know what you thought of it down in the comments. And if you haven't read it, well, I hope that maybe something you saw today would motivate you to give it a try. It's very accessible and easy to get your hands on. Now, if you're ready for some more content, I've got both a short box showcase and a recent back issue haul to share with you. As always, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.